This is Barb Angelo. She's a past life regression specialist and a certified instructor.
It was Brian Weiss's book. So that was in the 90s. I found that. And I remember reading it. And as a Catholic, feeling kind of my questions were not being answered. I knew what reincarnation was, but until I read the book, I remember the hairs on my arm standing up and going, oh my God, this is it. This makes sense to me. So that kind of got the ball rolling for learning hypnosis. What, the stages. First, you have to learn hypnosis. Then I went in and did more training. Always wanted to do past life regression work, though. So that was my goal to get to that point.
So is reading Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, was that what actually got you into doing hypnosis in the first place as
Yes.
well?
Yes, because he mentioned, of course, that the bridge to all of this is hypnosis. I think a couple of years later, I actually had injured myself and was on short-term. I used to think the universe how it works.
Yeah.
My foot, I had two fractures. I was an outside salesperson. I couldn't drive for 8 weeks, I think. And I started a hypnosis training. I found it and was able to take this hypnosis training. And I did it again, thinking, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this, but I know I need to start here. And that's how I started.
So that's an awakening experience in itself, reading that book.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got your hypnosis training and started practicing. How long was it before you got into doing past life regressions?
Well, this is interesting because as I was in training, so, part of the training is doing self-hypnosis, and I bought, the CDs. I still listen to those lovely, I like the kind of celestial soaring music. That's what really opens up my crown chakra. And I remember it was during the day, and I sat down, closed my eyes, and thought, okay, I'm going to go into a meditative hypnotic state. And I had past life regressions.
I also had my first past life experience while I was training hypnosis in class. I
I
remember,
didn't know that.
yeah, I remember being like an Indian nobleman-ish, comfortable enough to not have to work if you didn't feel like it. So I was like, oh, I'll do some spirit. And a spiritual teacher came by. I was like, oh, I'll do it later. I got plenty of time. And then I remembered 15 years later, I never got around to it, and I was regretful.
Wow.
So I was like, I could kick back and take things a bit easier. I've got a fortunate birth, but I've got to do the work.
Isn't that interesting? And it's so interesting when you relay that to people who've never had an experience and you say, I just knew all of those things. I didn't see it. Nobody told me. I knew that. You're feeling the feelings of that person. Mine, when it opened
Yeah.
up, I was a dark-skinned little girl. There was a boy with me. I knew it was my brother in this life. And the word Pakistan came across my viewing screen.
Right.
And my logical mind said, yeah, but it wasn't Pakistan back then. So I
Right.
knew it, but I knew that that was my subconscious saying, this is the part of the world that you're in. And it was very brief. There was not a lot of visual, but the next moment, my brother was lying on the ground. We were outside. It was an open air, like a market, and a stone, like a little, I don't know what you would call it, like a thing you would walk through,
Yeah.
had collapsed. It was an accident, and he was crushed by it. And I just remember seeing his body, and what I thought was, my mother is never going to forgive me. And before that, when I saw this little boy who I knew was my brother, the saying, I watch over you, you watch over me, I kept hearing in my head. And I knew that's what we would say to each other, that we were supposed to look out for each other. And that was the end of it. And then I went into another one, and then another one. And then I pulled myself out of it and said, what the heck? But I knew, again, the logical mind was saying, oh my gosh, I'm having a past life regression. This is what it is. I knew exactly what it was.
In my case, I was also Pakistan is North India, or Hindustan back in the day. And when I had my regression, I was actually in North India at the California Hypnosis Institute of India. So I was in New Delhi, but
Oh, wow.
I'd also only been in India. Actually, I'd spent a year or two there before, but I was like, why is a New Zealander in love with and feels at home with India? And so I went back to an Indian past life. I was like, of course. You know?
Of course. And here's the funny thing, Mark, I have no desire to go to India. I
Yeah,
don't. I don't, it's not a negative feeling or a positive. It's just, I guess maybe, oh, I've done that.
sure.
I've been there, done that. I have a lot of Indian clients, a lot of Hindu clients.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like when you understand who you've been, you can relate to a lot more people too.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. That is one of those indicators that if who was I in a past life, you can look at what you're attracted to, what you're doing in this life, and a
Exactly.
lot of clues are there. So
So,
fast, yeah. And so, well, actually, another reason why I was in India, because for me, I was brought up Australia, New Zealand, also in London, Europe, but not in America. And so the thing for you is if you're in New Jersey having these experiences, you're close to great teachers and like Brian Weiss. So tell us a little bit about how that training progressed.
So I belong to several hypnosis organizations. I was trained with the NGH, the National Guild of Hypnotists, and I would go to their conference every year for more training. That's where I started my past life regression training with David Quigley. So I had taken somatic healing, advanced past life regression, past life regression. I was already doing past life regressions when the opportunity came up to study with Brian Weiss at Omega in New York in Rhinebeck. And I have to say, it was such a wonderful experience just to watch him and meet him. You wouldn't know it because he seems very, I mean, he's a very calm, gentle person, funny as anything. He sat up there and people were literally doubled over laughing. He was sharing stories and talking about things. I know he's well into his 80s now, and during COVID, that was probably his last training booked and they had to cancel it. I don't know if he is going to train anymore, but he did say to the class, I think this is so important that my goal is to train as many past life therapists as I can because it's that important for people. But I always remember when you were talking about just talking about, who we've been and how it can relate. And he said, I always tell people, if you have a culture or a race that you do not like or you hate, you better watch out because you'll come back as someone like that to experience it. And a guy yelled out, I hate rich people. And everybody, of course, had a good laugh over
That's
that.
pretty
So
good.
I still tell that story. I love it. That's how funny he was. But it is funny because here I am. When people ask you, well, what's your background? Who are you? Well, I'm Welsh, I'm Irish, I'm this. And I don't say I'm also Hindu, I'm all these other different lifetimes I've had. So when people claim just one kind of nationality or one culture, one race, I laugh because you probably are a lot of different things in the past.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So a progression. So you meet a master in a book, you get to meet him in real life. That's pretty
Hmm.
fortunate. Uh,
Yes.